In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your AI-powered second brain, and we're going to do it together and set it up together from absolute scratch. And by the end of it, you're going to have your own small brain that will free up your big brain. Your small brain is going to take raw ingredients, notes, thoughts, articles, and all the stuff that you do, you think, you consume, you experience, whatever you want to feed as raw ingredients into your small brain, as well as details about you, whatever you want to feed in there as well, and then be able to process them, organize them, analyze them, or enrich them, plugging into any LLM that you want to be able to use. And then you can collaborate with that small brain because it's loaded up with all of this stuff in here to then help you with instant recall, work management. You can create, you can vibe code, you can build features, you can really start to work with your small brain to make stuff. You can synthesize thoughts, thoughts that were previously possibly completely disjointed or not connected, and then get small brain to help you see whether there are any type of synthesis whatsoever to then have new ideas emerge. And then there's also going to be a soul.md, which allows you to customize how you have your LLM talk to you and remember how you want your LLM to behave. We have soul.md for that as well. And finally, it's also going to have an auto improve part of small brain too, where you provided a feedback loop. It also performs self checks and it extracts learnings from the ways that you have been working together. And if there are any mistakes, we can then put that into the learnings file and it will remember not to make those mistakes moving into the future. That's going to be the small brain that we'll be building together today. It's going to be step by step, every single step of the way. And I'm going to give you for this video the bare bones to be able to then start adding other features. Along the way, you'll get to learn how to use Claude Code in a code editor. So if you ever want to vibe code in the future, the code editor is going to seem a lot less intimidating. We'll use Claude Cowork and actually build a web page inside of Claude Cowork together. You're also going to create Claude skills and hooks. Also going to have persistent context and memory and learn how to do that. And I'm going to show you the various ways of working with your small brain, whether that's in Cowork, in Code Editor, or even inside of the terminal. If you're a founder or manager who want your people to start adopting AI and they just don't know how, I created this video as a starting point, a really easy on-ramp. So you can send your people this video and get them to start using the various different types of tools without them worrying about, hey, am I going to mess something up because it's a work thing that I got to do. But it's also sticky enough because it's their second brain that they will continue to start adopting and using what we're going to build today. So let's get to it. Okay, the first thing we want to do is get Obsidian set up on our machine. Obsidian is a local note-taking app. And what I mean by local is that all the files will live inside of your machine and not in the cloud. And this will form the container for all of our notes for Small Brain. So when you open up Obsidian for the first time, this is what you'll see. Don't worry about quick start. Let's create a new vault together. You've got Uncle D here to talk you through the whole thing. So don't stress about the quick start. Hit create and let's name this Small Brain your name, or in this case, my name. Location, let's go into documents and let's create a folder called Obsidian. Because if it lives inside of the Obsidian folder, open, we can create as many new vaults as we want moving forward, and it'll always live inside the Obsidian main folder. Let's hit create here. And there we have it. This is what you'll see first and foremost. Let's give you a tour of the interface so that we don't get lost because there are a lot of things going on. Over here on the left, we've got a menu bar with a bunch of icons. If you hover over each one, it will tell you what it actually is if you click on it. This will open a quick switcher, for example. This opens the graph view, and we can see the graph view here already. We've got then creating a new canvas, et cetera, et cetera. We will, as we go through this, we will start using some of these. So don't stress about it too much. We don't have to know all of it right now. Then we've got the left sidebar in here, which we can expand and collapse just using this little button. And there are three options inside of the sidebar. The first one is files, where we can create a new note. We can create a new folder. We can change the sort order, and you can just explore the rest, okay? There's search here as well. So if you need to look for a specific file or a specific folder, you can then look for it in here too. And over here, you've got bookmarks, and you can bookmark any note essentially, and it will get added into this little panel in here. So let's go back to files really quickly and talk about this main panel here. So we've got panels in here. We can actually move them over if we wanted to. And now it becomes this type of view instead, or we can just right click and go split right, and it opens up there as a clone. So let's shut this and get back to this view. This right here is essentially a note. And we've got the title over here, and we've got some text. And you can start editing this just like you could with Apple Notes or like a Notion doc, for example, with a key difference, which is this little create a link. Make a note of something, create a link. You can see this is in dark purple, and you can see down here that it is also grayed out. What happens if I click on this? And I'm going to hit Command click. And now you notice that create a link, if we go back to welcome, is no longer dark purple, but instead it is a full purple instead. And what this means is before, if I remove this and actually delete this note, it will warn me, yes, there's one link pointing to this file. You see how it goes back to dark purple again? So what that means is I can type and go, I am creating content for my agency, right hook. And what happens here is we've got now 1, 2, 3 potential, but not created yet, other notes inside of our vault. You'll notice in the files here, there's only still welcome because we have not actually created them yet. So if we click on it, now it creates a link. Create a link is active, and we can see which ones are actual notes versus which ones are not created yet, but mentioned in a note. So inside of Small Brain, we treat these as wiki links. So one note can be related to a whole bunch of other notes. And that way, our small brain, when we plug an AI in there, can start to navigate through the different notes and find the connecting dots because of all these connections that are getting made through those wiki link mentions. So if I go here and go back into welcome, that's what this is about. All these notes in here, these wiki links. And then there's, of course, like actual links. And you can see that it's an actual link because this points out to something else completely. We won't touch that for now. Now, also, let's talk about the right panel. So if we look at the welcome note, there are no backlinks to mention that are mentioning welcome, but welcome mentions and links out to 3 different notes, right? One that has been created and 2 that haven't been created yet. So that is what these links, hopefully this gives you a picture of what the links actually look like. There are also tags, and they're all, you can see all properties, and you can have like an outline. So for example, if there is a heading 1, you can see the outline in there. And then heading 2, you'll be able to see the outline in there as well. So if you have really long documents, the outline here will be able to show you essentially like a table of contents that you can take to each section. So this is our welcome note. And for the most part, this is what you'll be using inside of Obsidian. And there's also this little button down here, the final thing I want to show you, which is the settings. And you can go in here and start changing up your the way that you have your Obsidian configured. And we'll be talking about core plugins as well as community plugins later. So now we have this set up. Let's move on to setting up Claude. Let's get Claude onto our machine 2 ways. First, Claude Desktop, and then also Claude via terminal. So when we first open up Claude Desktop, just sign in using your regular sign in method, and make sure that you are on at least the Claude Pro plan. Anything less than that, and you'll hit these walls whenever you're trying to use Claude for any type of serious work. All right, so let's just log in here, hit continue. It'll ask you to sign in. get your sign-in credentials in, and you'll be good to go. If you've never worked inside of Cloud Desktop before, this is what it'll look like. You'll have your chat, your Cowork, and your code. You can see I'm signed into my pro plan in there. Good enough for now. We're going to leave this. We'll come back to it later. Next one is getting Claude inside of our terminal. Just because you have it installed via your desktop does not mean it's activated on your terminal. So we want to do that as well. All you got to do here is go to Google. First, you want to type in install Claude in terminal, search for that, and you're going to find this little bash command. If you've never run a bash command before inside of terminal, now is the time. So copy that and let's go into terminal. If you've never worked in terminal before, it might seem a little bit intimidating. Let's talk you through it so that I can take away that intimidation. I was super intimidated too. I didn't want to type something in and have my entire machine blow up. All terminal is just a text-based version of being able to run your machine. And what I mean by that is anything that you can do inside of the graphical user interface, you can do in here as well. Okay, so let's give you a tour. When you first open up terminal, and to do that, you can just type in terminal and open it up. You'll be in here. If you see this tilde sign, that means that you are in your root folder of your user. So we're in my machine right now. Go to Mac.hd, go to users, and go to Bushido. Applications, desktop documents, we've got these 6 over here. If I type ls, just like how I clicked into Bushido, I'm now inside and it shows me all the different things that are in this folder. Now, if I want to go into documents, I double click in the graphical user interface, the GUI. If I want to go into the documents folder inside of terminal, I just type in CD, case sensitive documents with capital D. And I'm inside of documents. If I hit ls again, it'll show me it's got Obsidian and Vone recordings, these 2 right there. And if I wanted to create a folder inside of my graphical user interface, just go new folder, right? And it creates a new folder. In here, I can do the same, but it's not create new folder. I need to know what the command is, mkdir folder 2. And folder 2 shows up just like that. So as a human user, if we can start to drive our machine, not only through the graphical user interface, but also through terminal, if we give Claude access to terminal and give it access to certain things that it can do inside of terminal, then now we can take that to our advantage. So let's get Claude going in here. All right, that was just the whole point of showing you this. Let me go back out of documents and into the folder higher up. In other words, let me just delete this real quick. Let me go up 1 folder to Bushido. Up 1 folder is cd ... Hit enter, and I'm now back at my home. And let's go back to this, copy the curl, go back into terminal, paste, hit it. You don't see a progress bar. You just see some text change up over there. It's setting up Claude Code. Great. It's now installed. Installation is complete. And if we type in Claude and hit enter, it will ask us to get started and set up. Dark mode is fine. Let's log in with my subscription, option number 1. Yes, let's authorize in here. I can now close this window, go back to terminal. Great. Hit enter to continue. Claude can make mistakes, of course. Please only use it with code that I trust, of course. Hit enter. Let's go with the recommended settings. Hit enter. Yes, I trust this folder. This is my own home folder. Great. You're about to work in it. I'm okay with that. Terminal would like to access data from other apps. Sure. If you're getting this set up for the first time, there might be a few other prompts that it will ask for access to, like, for example, your Apple Music library or your documents folder. Allow or deny according to the level of security that you want to maintain. So you don't need access to my Apple library or my photos, for example, don't allow. But if you want it to be able to drive other apps, allow it for now, okay? So now we are in terminal. Good enough. We've got it downloaded and set up in two different places. We can move on. And as we're setting up Small Brain, we'll come back into Claude Desktop and Claude Terminal again so that I can show you how it gets used in relation to Small Brain. Next thing we're going to install is Visual Studio Code or VS Code. This is what programmers and developers use to code up their apps. We're not going to be doing any type of vibe coding or coding up any type of apps, but using VS Code with Claude inside of it is going to be a great way to drive Small Brain. So let's get this guy set up. When we open VS Code for the first time, we've got VS Code here. This is our Obsidian, by the way. When we open it for the first time, it'll take you through some type of startup wizard. And the first thing it'll ask you to do is ask you whether you want to sign in. You can skip that completely and just go, I'm going to skip this. I don't want to sign in. And eventually it'll get you to this interface. Let's talk you through this interface quite quickly. On the left in here, just like in Obsidian, there are going to be a few little menu items. You won't see the Claude one just yet. I want to get that set up for you. If you click on any of these, it will just toggle opening up the left side panel, right? Extensions and Explorer in here. You can also open up the side panel with this little button there. Now there's also a right panel or a right pane, and this will just open up this little chat. We will not be using this at all. So just if you accidentally hit it to shut it, it's completely fine. And if we toggle this panel at the bottom, it opens up terminal, the same terminal that we had, I showed you before. So just know that you can access terminal inside of VS Code without having to actually open up a dedicated terminal. Okay, let me just shut this real quick and let's get back into this. Now, we can navigate to, just like how we could navigate inside a terminal to a certain folder, or we could navigate through this right here. We can navigate across our machine inside of the graphical user interface through Finder. We can do the same inside of VS Code. So let's open up a folder. Let's go to Documents. Let's go to Obsidian, and let's open up Small Brain. Right now, Small Brain has two markdown files. Let's hit Open. And here we are inside of Small Brain with create a link and welcome. There's also a .obsidian. So what's going on in here? Why do we see this folder? But if we go into our Finder and go inside of Obsidian, Small Brain, wait, where's the .obsidian? What's going on? Well, anything that has dot in front of it is hidden to the user inside of most instances because it contains just config files, configuration files, setup files, where if someone does something accidentally, it messes up the whole thing. So we can actually see it inside of a graphical user interface just by hitting Command, Shift, and the full stop button or the period button. And now you see it in there and it's grayed out. And we can navigate through this as well, but you can see it's got like app settings, appearance settings, core plugin settings, workspace settings, and that's exactly why. Okay, so let me just toggle this back off again, Command, Shift, and full stop, period, and let's go back into VS Code. All right, that was a little side quest. Now that we are in here, let's get set up with Claude in here. So we have our third place where we have Claude. Go into extensions. I want you to search for the word Claude, and a whole bunch of options are going to show up. You want to download the one called Claude Code for VS Code. It's got 17.3 million installs. That's the one you want to have downloaded and installed. I've already have it installed. You can just hit the install button that shows up here for you. And once the install is done, this small little icon would show up over there. And this icon is going to show up here. So let's go back into Files. Let's go to welcome.md, which will open this thing up. And if we hit this button in there, Claude Code shows up in here. If you're doing this for the first time, just like in Terminal, it'll ask you to log in. So log in and you'll see this interface. I'm going to shut this for now so that we can see this full. Mine says auto mode is disabled. Straight out of the box, yours would not have auto mode, more likely than not. More likely you'll have ask before edits, you'll have edit automatically, and you have plan mode. How do we turn these two on and why should we turn it on? Let's talk about this right now. Let's talk about first how. Well, for the how, we go into extensions, we hit this little settings button, and we go into settings. And in fact, it'll be the first setting that comes up. Allow dangerously skip permissions. Hit this thing on and get back out of here. And you might have to quit VS Code and fire it back up again. And once you do, what will happen is, let me just shut this. You'll see the different modes, auto mode and bypass permissions show up. For the most part, for the rest of this video, we're going to be using auto mode. Ask before edits effectively means that if as Claude is working and it has certain changes that it would like to make and start editing your files, it will ask you for permission first. It moves slower, but it allows you finer tuned controls to go, hey, is this okay for me to do? Hey, is this okay for me to do? It's going to ask you each and every single time. Edit automatically, exactly like what it says. Plan mode is where if you are trying to vibe code something or build a system or a feature or work through a project, you leave it in plan mode and Claude will not action anything. It will interview you and ask you a bunch of questions to find out, hey, is this what you want based off of the scope? And it won't take any actions. And once it has that plan, then you can start taking actions. So we won't be touching plan mode for the most part here. That will be covered in a completely different video. We'll be using auto mode. Bypass permissions, previously known as YOLO mode, is where you just go full YOLO. All right. So that's modes in here. You can just toggle that by clicking on this. Let me show you something else in here as well that is you're going to be using a fair bit, which is the slash commands. You can hit it through this button over there in the command menu, or you can just hit slash and a bunch of stuff show up. I want to show you the most common things. First one is switching a model. So if you type in very quickly, if you type in slash model, you can go switch model, click on it, and you see what models are available to you. For us, for the rest of this demo, we're going to be using Opus. The default recommended on the Pro plan is going to be Sonnet, but because we have a bit of setup to do, we want to use a bit more of an advanced model just for now. Now, what this means also is that it is 2x more usage versus Sonnet. It's going to eat up your tokens 2x more than if you're using Sonnet. Speaking about tokens, this brings us to now context. Each session that we have while we're chatting with Claude inside Claude Code, inside of VS Code or inside of any interface, has a limited amount of context. In other words, how much backing and forthing do we get to do with Claude before it starts to either hallucinate, forget what we initially spoke about Claude with, or completely just refuses to keep working. So if you type in slash context, it will show you how much context has already been used up and how much is left over, free space, and what is taking up the context. So right now, the system prompt is taking up 0.2%, and tools, memory files, skills, etc., because it's a fresh install. As your Claude instance and your small brain starts to grow, there's two separate things, by the way, right? As those things start to grow, we want to be able to keep a watchful eye on the tokens that are getting used up because we're adding more context inside of Claude when we're firing it up. And I'll show you a real example of that later. So I just want to explain the concept to you right now. Next one is usage. Because we're on the Pro plan, we want to be mindful of how much usage that we're eating up. If you type in usage, this is what you'll see. Usage is determined by Claude in a 5-hour session throughout your day. So we just fired up this demo. You can see in here 0% usage within this 5-hour window, but it will reset in 1 hour. What that means is if you chew up a bunch of your usage, you might have to wait for the next 5-hour window before you can keep working with Claude again. And there's also a weekly budget that you've been allocated as well. So in other words, if you chew through your weekly budget on, say, a Tuesday, you might have to wait till the end of those 7 days before it ticks over again. So we always want to be mindful of how much we are using Claude in this type of a way inside of Small Brain, or just Claude in general. Okay. And then further down here, it gives you some more detail around what is contributing to your usage. So those are mainly the ones that we have commonly used. Another one is effort. Effort right now is extra high. What is effort? Well, effort is the amount of thinking in the background or trying in the background that your model is going to perform, right? So it can go, see, okay, right here, set how hard the model tries. And if you just click on over the text, if you just click on it, it'll just keep changing and going over. For setting up small brain, we're going to go with extra high. And for the model, we're going to go with Opus. So there you have it. That is modes. And that is also your little command panel in here. You can go / and there are going to be a whole bunch of other things that we can do as well. I don't want to overwhelm you with all that stuff, especially since we can also create our own / commands, which we'll do later when I talk to you about setting up Claude skills. Yes, we'll be setting up Claude skills during this video as well. So for the most part, we have VS Code set up. One final thing to install, and then we can get Small Brain going. And I promise it's going to be the final thing, and it's this thing called QMD. Now, QMD is Query Markup Documents, an on-device search engine for everything you need to remember. If we click on this, we'll get taken to a GitHub repo or a GitHub repository where it just contains a bunch of folders and files required to get a piece of software going. GitHub repos can contain a bunch of different stuff like documents, for example. But in this case, we can actually pull from this GitHub repo and have this installed onto our machine. The author of this repo with a bunch of contributors, but the author of this repo is Toby. Toby is the CEO of Shopify, and he went out and built this one thing that indexes markdown files, markdown notes, meeting transcriptions, documentation, and knowledge bases to help us search with keywords or natural language, which is ideal for agentic flows. So here's the TLDR, right? If you gave Claude a Google Drive folder with 50 documents, say, for example, they're all text-based PDFs, and if you needed a specific piece of information, you need to ask Claude for a specific piece of information and about that and help it recall for you, then what Claude would have to do, because it's just a folder, is read through every single last PDF to then be able to get a sense of what's inside those PDFs to then pull out a response based off the information in those PDFs. Highly inefficient because it has to chew up through all that context and use all those tokens to be able to get that information. Now, if we have our small brain inside of Obsidian and we have QMD, Claude doesn't have to do that anymore. It just has to go and use QMD as well as Obsidian's command line interface. And now it can then go find the relevant information, be a lot more token efficient, and then bring it back to you with also a minimal or at least like a low probability of it just making shit up. So that's why we want QMD in here. Now, there's all this technical stuff down here, like install globally, node or bun. What is node? What is bun? What is this NPM stuff? We don't need to know most of that stuff. We can actually lean on Claude to help us install this. But the first thing we want to do is make sure we have Node on our machine. Node.js, just Google Node.js, download, and you want to download it for your machine and get the installer, go through the installer, and you would have Node on your machine. If you want to confirm whether Node is on your machine, all you have to do is go into terminal. So my terminal is still inside of Claude Code. I'm going to hit Control-C once, Control-C again, and that will get me out of Claude. And I just need to, after I've downloaded and installed Node, just type in node-v. And I've got a version in here, which means there is something installed, and this is the version that's installed. So that's a really easy way to confirm that. Now let's go get Claude to help us install that one QMD. And we're going to go back into Visual Studio Code that is fired up inside of our folder. And I want to show you this thing first. What folder are we working in. So Claude Code knows what folder we're working in, and it also knows that it's an Obsidian vault. It's not just a GitHub repo or any old folder. Good to know. So now that we've established that, let's move on. Help me install this GitHub repo. And let's go on to here and just copy this GitHub URL and go back into VS Code and punch this in. So as you can see here, Claude is still thinking, but it actually went and web fetched. In other words, went to go into that URL, read what's inside of that URL, that web page, and said, this is a great fit for your Obsidian Vault. QMD is a local CLI search engine for docs and notes. Let me check your environment. And it went and checked whether we had Node and all the other prerequisite stuff that needs to exist on our machine. And if not, it'll tell us so. And no homebrew on this machine. That matters. Okay, it's installed. And it installed it via bun. Lovely. QMD runs cleanly. Great. It helped us install. Now, if you encounter any troubles, I did not, but if you do encounter any troubles, just talk to Claude and ask it to help you along the way. It might encourage you, or it might recommend that you go into terminal and punch in certain commands yourself. Claude is very helpful in this instance. So next up, optional your call. Since you're sitting on an Obsidian Vault, QMD is basically built for this, and it tells us what we need to do, which we will do later. So we have all the stuff installed now. We have VS Code, we have Claude Code on desktop, or just Claude desktop. We have Claude in terminal. We also have Obsidian, and we have QMD. Now it's time to get our small brain going. We'll continue the QMD work later once we have our small brain populated. So we'll come back to this after. So we're going to start a new session by hitting this button over here, and this starts a completely new session. And what we're going to do now is get small brain going. I'm going to paste in a prompt, and let's run through this prompt together. This is going to be the prompt that kicks everything off. We're building my second brain Obsidian Vault inspired by this URL. Before we build anything, tell me why Karpathy structure is good as a second brain. High level, plain English, please. Claude doesn't know anything about me at this moment, and it doesn't know that I am not a developer, at least not an experienced one, and I would like stuff explained back to me in plain English when it has a lot of potential technical jargon. So that's why I included this last line in here. Now, before you hit enter and copy what I'm doing, let's go actually figure out what I'm getting you to do and what this Karpathy thing is. That URL is back to GitHub again, but this time it's not a repo, it's just a gist. And it's just a markdown file that describes an LLM wiki, a pattern for building personal knowledge bases using LLMs. Now, the author of it is Karpathy. Who is Karpathy? Well, Andrej Karpathy is an AI researcher and educator. He's also a founding member of OpenAI and later director of AI at Tesla. This guy knows a thing or two. Also very prolific on X and drops a bunch of stuff, so do give him a follow on X. Now, we are following his method. We don't need to read through this because let's go back into Visual Studio Code. We're asking Claude to give us like a high-level explanation of why it's helpful. So let's hit enter now. Okay, great. Claude came back with an answer. Let's figure this thing out together. Got it. Here's the gist and why it works as a second brain. We're not building anything yet. Okay, awesome. What the setup actually is, it's not a folder organizing scheme. It's an LLM maintained wiki with 3 layers. Raw sources, read only, never edited. The wiki itself, so interlinked markdown pages. Now, hopefully you understand why I showed you these little links before, right? Summaries, concept pages, entity pages that the LLM writes and keeps current. So the LLM does it for us. In our instance, we're using Claude Code. And the schema, Claude.md, the rule book telling the LLM how to ingest, answer, and clean it up. We'll talk about what this Claude.md is later, all right? Plus 2 bookkeeping files, index.md, a catalog of every page, and a log.md, an append-only history of everything that happened. We're going to actually take that and take it one step further. And I'll show you what that looks like immediately in the next step. Why this is good, I won't read through this type of stuff because if you punch in this prompt, you'll get your own explanation. And if you don't understand anything in this explanation, you can continue that conversation with Claude until you do. That's the helpful thing about working with an LLM. You can keep asking, and it will not judge you for being a dummy. And it also will not get irritated and be like, I'm done asking this. I'm busy. I got other stuff to do. So just keep asking. Just be mindful of context, of course, right? Speaking about context, let's have a look at how much we have chewed up so far. Hardly anything, 2%. Lovely, let's keep going. Now, the next prompt, now that we understand the basics of it, which is there's a raw layer, there's a wiki layer, and there's a schema files that help the LLM understand what is inside of this thing and navigate accordingly, we can move on to our next prompt, which is this thing that I'm going to paste in here, and then I'll talk you through what we'll be seeing. I need you to build the skeleton of my vault for me. Here is how I want my vault structured. So there's small brain up the top, and then there is a raw main folder. This is what flows in. You write here, Claude only reads. Inside of raw, there's daily notes, like a daily journal. There are just notes, which is free form thoughts and ideas. Then there's captures. Inside of captures, there's a desktop version of capturing and mobile version of capturing. We will not be touching this inside of this demo. I just want to create that skeleton for you. That's going to be an add-on, which I'll talk about at the very end. And you can capture a bunch of stuff and get your LLM to process it for you and interconnect it with other nodes. Now, besides captures, we also have meetings. These are just raw meeting notes and transcripts from whichever meeting note taker program that you have. There are going to be chats. For this demo, we won't be touching meetings as well. That's going to be add-on too. And I'll show you a little bit of a preview of that meeting stuff while we're going through this. There's also going to be chats, save Claude Code conversations. So anything that you come up with and cook with Claude in here, you can actually save the entire transcript if you so wish, just as a raw file. And then brain is the next one that sits at the same level as raw. And what this does is, what this contains rather, is what Claude builds. Claude maintains this, and you review it inside of Obsidian. Inside of brain, we've got system, which contains a few files that I will talk you through later. These are important files that we want Claude to be aware of. There's also a taxonomy folder, which describes each note type for Claude so that Claude can understand and orient itself. And you can read too, so that you and Claude are on the same page. This is your small brain after all. There's going to be daily memory. This is Claude's session log. This is something that's super cool because we can actually point Claude to fire up daily memory every time when you start a new session. So it will remember the work that you did previously and pick up where you left off. So you don't lose that chain. You don't lose that train of thought. You don't lose the state in which you worked through a project. And you can pick up where you left off without having to hold it in your head. Claude can help you there. We've got meetings again, but this time it's synthesized meeting summaries. There are decisions, actions, action items, attendees, and a few other pluses that I will talk you through later beyond just action items and the vanilla stuff, right? Like what we promised each other we're going to do. I actually want to show you how we can get into the mind of the person that we're talking to and pair it together with our working style and find ways to better work together. That's a little preview, and then I'll show you where later we will be building stuff like that. There are going to be domains, knowledge areas. So, for example, you're interested in, I don't know, trading, you're interested in crypto, you're interested in e-com, you're interested in AI. These can all be separate domains, or domains can be something like family, personal, home, fitness. You get the idea. Of course, there has to be projects. There are going to be notes, but not raw notes. These ones are synthesized notes. They're going to be resources, so stuff that you've consumed. They're going to be contacts, and they're going to be templates too. So that's the high level stuff. Let's hit enter. And while Claude is thinking, let's pay attention to what's happening in here. I'm going to close welcome so that we see 1, the graph view, and 2, the panel in here. Let's have a look at what happens here, what happens here, and also in association, what happens here as well. Keeping in mind that this is just a mirror of this right there. And while this is happening, I'm gonna go make a coffee, come on back, and it should be all up. I'll leave this on time lapse so we can see what's going on. Let's go. All right, got my coffee. Now I'm back. Claude seems to have created a bunch of stuff over here, new notes as well as new folders. Great, best practice. Let's just look through what Claude actually went and did. Let's go back to the top. Okay, lovely. This is a clear build task. Let me set up the folder structure. Amazing. The Vault's a stock Obsidian setup, just the files that were there before. And then it went and created its own to-do list of to create the root Claude.md. It might not do this every single time. So I want to talk about that at the very end of this. It go write the operating docs, create the taxonomy hubs, and then create note templates, and then add a dot get keep. And we know about the dot now and how dot means it's hidden to all other the less privileged eyes. So dot keep should be for our eyes only and not everyone else. Same thing for dot obsidian. To place placeholders to empty folders. Okay, and then I would bootstrap the whole thing, built a bunch of system files. Now it went and did the taxonomy hubs, daily memory.md. Let's actually look through each one for now, okay? So let's see what it wired up. It said that it wrote the Claude.md. So there's a Claude.md here. Let's open it up. So what Claude.md is, think about it like an instruction file. If you're familiar with ChatGPT and how we always start off with, remember back when there were all these LinkedIn posts around like, this system prompt is absolutely insane. We start off with a system prompt to go, hey, you are acting as a content strategist. Go perform this task. I want you to do this. So think of Claude.md as a system prompt that gets fired off at the start of each session without you having to re-enter that system prompt. So this set of instructions is punched in by Claude from understanding what is inside of the instructions that we gave it earlier, as well as the context of the folder. This is Small Brain, a second brain Obsidian Vault inspired by Karpathy's LLM-wiki pattern. Vault has two halves. At session start, it should read these things. Cool, we'll talk about that later as well, where we want certain information loaded up each session without us having to copy and paste each time, such as the structure, how the vault is laid out. It should remember that. It should remember how Claude should operate also, the voice and the judgment calls. It should also remember stuff about me and how to work with me. It also should remember the schema, how to write each different type of file or note rather. The current map of the brain, it should know that as well. And then it also should know the learnings across time. So as we keep working with small brain, sometimes Claude might miss certain things or mess up certain things. We can promote it to a line inside of learnings.md. So that way, the next time it fires up, it can load up those learnings already and minimize the likelihood of it making that mistake again. Now we have that self-evolving, self-improving portion of it. Okay, so we've got some golden rules in here as well. And on top of that, the typical kind of loop, right? We ingest something and then we can query, the user, us can query it. And there's some golden rules in here too, like everything has to be cross-linked with a wiki link. We don't want any orphans, etc. So that's awesome. We also have structure MD, schema, the soul, user MD. Let's have a look at user MD. So that should live inside of brain, inside of system, and it should be right here. Okay, cool. Empty right now. It's a to-do. What I want from this brain, it filled in a few different elements, and we'll be filling this in later. It also went away and did some taxonomy stubs as well, or they called it hubs. What is taxonomy? Let's go in here and have a look. So capture is a potential type of note, and it describes what a capture is. Chat is another one. It describes what it is. And then that way, if Claude ever goes in and reads the taxonomy or has to create a new version of this type of a note, then it knows what the type of note is. Love that. So we're going to be customizing this for us later as well. So let's keep going to the bottom, create note templates. Interesting. It went out and did some templates for us too, so that if we do need to create a new daily note, it looks like this. So what's on my mind, what I did today, notes and ideas tomorrow. We can customize this for ourselves as well. Meeting summaries as well as meetings, okay? Notes, projects, resources, synthesis, as well as topic. Claude went out and created these just off of that one prompt. Our next job is to go and customize all of this so that it is useful for our own case. So I'll be talking you through that. Let's go down to the very bottom over here. The decisions I made that weren't in your diagram, worth a look. So it's telling us, have a look at the Claude.md. Your diagram lists the system docs at what Claude reads the session start, but nothing triggers that. The root Claude.md is the bootstrap. It points Claude to read brain system, and then asterisk pretty much means brain/system/ files in order, and states the golden rules. This is the glue that makes the whole thing actually run. The 13 value type system in schema.md, different types. We're going to review that later together. I want to make sure that we review that so that it's custom for you as well. There's a status in here as well, unprocessed, process, or skip. This is the one field Claude writes back to in raw so that we can know whether that raw thing has been processed or not, so that Claude doesn't just reprocess old stuff. There needs to be some status in here. So let's actually look at this one inside of raw. Are there any templates for a raw note? Seems like there isn't. There's one for note. So we're going, and it says unprocessed. So that's something we want to go in and customize also. And what I mean by that is if we're going to have notes in here, as well as notes in here, one for brain and one for raw, we're going to have to disambiguate between the two. That's where we're going to have to teach Claude some of these things. So 2 things for me. There's a data view and core template. Okay, cool. 2 things for us here. User.md has to-do markers. Thanks for helping us, Claude. And then sanity check what's in schema.md. So we have the bare bones setup. Let's move on. You know how Claude took a few minutes to set up all the stuff that we just did? Well, there are 2 quality of life features that we can add that's going to make working with Claude Code and Small Brain a lot more friendly for you. One is switching on or creating a notification so that every time Claude needs you to pay attention because it's done with its work, it will play a sound so that you can come back and go, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to go, while Claude is working on stuff, I'm going to go check my Slack, work on a project, think through stuff, etc. And I don't have to constantly come back and open up my VS Code to see if Claude is done. So first one is a notification sound. And then the second one is using voice to text dictation so that you don't have to constantly just be on your keyboard and typing. You can just talk to Claude. So use your voice instead, I mean. So the first one simply goes like this. All you got to do is go in here and say, set up a notification sound whenever you're done with your work and need input from me. If you type in a prompt like this, I've already set mine up. So Claude, what Claude is going to do is then go away and build for you a notification sound. And you can just work with Claude to get it to the point where you can confirm that it actually works. So that's a small little project for you to work with Claude on. The next thing that I want to recommend for you is some type of AI voice dictation. You might already have Whisperflow, which is a paid version of it. Let me show you the free version of it, which is Voen.ai. I was going through Reddit and managed to find this one tool that is completely free and unlimited. So you don't get throttled or you don't get blocked when you're on a free plan with Whisperflow with the 2,000 words. And when you run out, it tells you you can't use this anymore. You got to wait till next week. If you download Voen, it's not as sophisticated as Whisperflow in terms of the AI model it uses, but for the most part, it does the job. So just want to give it a little plug there. I have no affiliation with Voen whatsoever. Thank you, developers of Voen, for building this for us and making it free. So those are the two little quality of life updates or features that you can add to upgrade working together with your small brain. Okay, now let's customize the small brain skeleton that we have created so far and make it our own. So it's not just this vanilla out of the box version that I gave you and has no relevance to you whatsoever. There are going to be 3 steps here that we're going to be going through. The first one is going into our small brain and editing these 3 files, or at least these 2, and then making sure that this one is set correctly. User.md, if it gets fired up at the start of each session, will help small brain remember who you are, what your goals are, whatever you tell it, whatever details you give it, so that it remembers you and your style. Soul.md helps give a brief for Claude in terms of how you want Claude to speak to you, whether you want him to be extremely technical, extremely detailed, or give you high level, give me the bullets only go into detail if I ask. Those types of personality quirks, I guess, we can use soul.md for. That's the first thing we're going to do. And then we're going to customize the templates, and then we're going to customize the daily memory as well as the taxonomy, making sure that each of it works for you. So let's start off with the first thing, user.md. So if you go into my template, or at least let's just start here, right? Let's not even worry about the template so far. If we go into system and go into user, this is who the user is and how to work with them. Claude keeps this current as it learns more. The human can edit it directly anytime. So fill this in either by typing it in yourself and changing the sections to whatever you want to change it to, whatever information you want to give it. Or you can work together with Claude and ask Claude to interview you by saying something like, I'm working on the user.md file. Let's work through each section one by one. Interview me, please, so that you can learn more about me. We might add or remove sections as we go along. And a prompt like this will then allow you to fill in your own version of user.md. By the way, for my personal vault and my personal user.md, and by the way, my vault is kind of crazy. As you can see in here, it's got a whole bunch of different notes. For my personal vault and for the people inside of my Skool community, I encourage them to fill in this thing called a VAST snapshot. VAST stands for values, abilities, strengths, and tendencies. It's pretty much a snapshot of you as a person, your working style, etc. Right? And it's especially helpful for managers because then we use this as a document to help whoever we work with onboard to working together with us. Now, if we gave, and this is what it looks like, going through the exercise, and by the time in the community, my members go through this exercise. At the end of it, they'll fill in a template that looks like this. And it has the strengths and abilities and different types of results from personality assessments too. So what you can do if you are not part of my community, what you can do is go into, say for example, let's go to my downloads and let's go into personality assessments. I've got a few personality assessments here, nothing to do with my with the whole vast thing or expansive, right? You can do this completely outside of that, such as Clifton's strengths, such as Ray Dalio's principles U, Patrick Lencioni's working genius. You can do a big 5 assessment or you can do a disc assessment. You can just take these and if you want to, go like that. Hold shift and upload these files. And now we've got these PDFs loaded up as context here and go, I just gave you 5 different personality assessments about myself. Please review each one to enrich the user.md file. What this will do is then give Claude and Small Brain a picture of your working style, and it can pull out commonalities between each one. And now you've got that captured. Now Claude's read all those 5 different PDFs, and this is exactly the kind of synthesis the brain is used for. 5 instruments ready for convergence, read for convergence, distilled into one operational file. The signals are remarkably consistent across all 5, which makes the profile high confidence. Let me rewrite user.md. And just like that, user.md now looks different. It added the sources in here, which is great. The instruments agree strongly. And now it has a much more detailed picture of how I think, what drives me, what drains me and stresses me, how to work with me. This is the operational part. Now, here's a bit of a side quest. Here's where it gets interesting. Small Brain now has a file loaded up with my personality type. I haven't even given it, if I followed Vast, I would also tell it about areas of work where I am in my zone of genius, my strengths, as well as where my weaknesses are, what my abilities are, and also what my personal values are, which I have not uploaded in here as well. If I have those things uploaded into my user.md, if I ever have a meeting with someone, now that meeting transcription, if it gets processed by Small Brain and processed based off of a prompt where we're asking Claude to not only process the action items, what was promised, etc., but also an indication or a proxy of what Claude believes that the other person's personality type is, we can start to overlay my user.md with their contact note. And now I can work with Small Brain to go, hey, I'm about to have a meeting where I need to get buy-in from this person about a certain call to action, right? Some type of project, or it is a prospect that I would love to close and I just had a discovery call with them, or it's a supplier that I have a call with and I would like to in the future negotiate prices with them. Claude, help me figure out ways where I, with my personality, and them with their personality, what we've captured, how I can get buy-in from them. That's where it gets super interesting. This is exactly why, on top of just helping Claude and Small Brain know about us, it starts to become more useful in the real world. And naturally, of course, when it comes to creating content, if you want to use Small Brain to help you come up with content, you can now have your user MD file and your personality loaded in already. And now Claude can know more about you and your voice, but more importantly, your core personality. So super cool to have this part of user MD, not just a bullet point of this is the work I do, this is where I live, this is how much money I make, and these are my goals, for example. Okay, let's move on to soul.md. Soul is how Claude operates inside of Small Brain, voice and judgment. It gets read every session. So this is where you can start to alter stuff like this and tell Claude whatever you want. Claude, be funny. Or, hey, don't be sycophantic and don't tell me, good question. Or don't tell me, this is such a great idea. All that type of, all the preferences that you would like Claude to behave in, you can put in here, right? One thing you do want to do is disambiguate or make clear for Claude that Claude MD is meant to be the instructions on how to operate, and soul.md really should be mainly around the way that Claude interacts with you in responding. So if there is any overlap, just make sure that you work with Claude and tell Claude in here, this is make sure that soul.md does not have any conflicting information or conflicting instructions with Claude.md, and Claude can do the rest for you so that Small Brain is clear between Soul as well as Claude.md. The third note that we want to make sure we set our eyes on is the learnings.md. Learnings, you just want to make sure that it knows that it is durable lessons promoted over time, append only. And it's a pattern worth remembering across sessions, whether it's a preference, a recurring correction, a convergence. So every entry goes into this. And we want to make sure that this gets cleaned up because Otherwise, it's just going to append to thousands of lines that will get injected at the start of each session and chew up a bunch of context already. So, first things first, make sure that your learnings.md file has the same type of gist as what is in here. Your small brain needs to know that learnings.md should not just be a one-off for one instance where it made a mistake in something extremely specific and it goes into learnings.md. Your small brain should be able to come back to you and say, hey, this is something that I see happening across time as a pattern of us working. Should we put it into learnings.md? And then you can approve or decline accordingly or even alter. So that's what learnings.md is for. Now, as it starts to accumulate, we will have a way to come back in here and just tell Claude to make sure to remind Claude learnings.md should be the highest level stuff. Go through learnings.md and check if there is any overlap or there are any points that we can converge into one so that we are more context efficient when reading and firing up this note. And by doing that, you can make sure that learnings.md stays a high level file. So now we have those three out of the way, user.md, soul.md, and learnings.md out of the way. Let's move on to the next thing. Daily memory and daily notes, you will be working pretty much every single day. So let's work on that next. Let's go into templates really quickly. And let's have a look at daily note as well as our daily memory, which in here, Claude did not create as a template. So that's what we want to customize now. The way that I have it in my vault is daily note will have a date. So for example, 2026 06 14. So June 14th, 2026 dash daily note versus 2026 0614 dash daily memory. This way, Claude can know, and I can know also which one is which. You can see in here, Claude, in this chat at least, you might have a different version when Claude fires up on yours. Claude said, do you want me to log this to brain/daily memory/ and then it chose just a date syntax. Now, if there's this date syntax just naked like this without the suffix at the end, then we wouldn't know whether it's a note or a memory, a note living inside of raw, like a daily note that lives inside of raw, or a daily note, a daily memory that lives inside of brain. So that is something that we want to make sure that we have it nice and clean. So how are we going to do this? Well, let's instruct Claude accordingly. Let's work on the title, the template title for daily note and daily memory. The daily note should always look like this. And then I'm just going to punch this in. 0614 dash daily note. And the daily memory should always look like this. And then let's punch in an example, right? So daily memory. This way, it is always clear for us the difference between a daily note and a daily memory. So now we're starting to instruct Claude on how we want our small brain to be customized for us. Because before that, we gave it no context and no instructions whatsoever. And Claude picked up on exactly what I explained just before, which is the bare title like this would collide conceptually between the two. So suffixing makes the type unambiguous at a glance. So now it's updating both templates, plus the schema and the taxonomy. So this way, it knows the difference. One practical heads up so the convention actually holds. Obsidian's core templates plugin only fills the body. It doesn't file the name. Great time for us to now install our first Obsidian plugin, templater. So if we go into the settings, let's turn on community plugins and let's browse for, there are going to be a like 4,000 plus plugins. Oh, nice. It's the second one here. If it doesn't show up for you, it's just called templater. And what we want to do is install templater right now and hit enable. Now, what this allows us to do is, let me show you a living example. So right now, Daily Note has this syntax, which will punch out, supposedly, I don't know, because I use templater. Supposedly, this would then be dynamic of today's date and then Daily Note. And it should work in the metadata or the front matter of each note as well. And the front matter is helpful because it helps Claude be token efficient by just reading what's up the top here. And if it's not the right thing, it can move on to the next file as opposed to reading the entire body. So let's figure this out. Daily Note, let's go into settings one more time and go into the Daily Note. And we can see that there is no template file location. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we point the template file. I'll show you what happens, in fact, if we don't point it to the right template file. Supposedly the template file, Daily Note, should be like this. If I don't wire that up and I hit this open today's Daily Note, none of the template gets fired up and loaded in. So let me delete this file, delete, and let's try to remedy this without downloading, without using templater just yet, because we just enabled it. We didn't do anything else with it. So let's go to Daily Note. Templates, Daily Note. All right. New file location. Where should it be placed? It should go into raw Daily Notes. We've wired this up. Let's see what happens now when we hit this button. Okay, cool. It's got this right there, and it has created this right there as well. That works completely fine. If we use templater, this thing would change and work in a completely different type of way, because notice how this date is like that so far. Let's go and fire up templater instead. I just installed the templater plugin. Let's make sure that our templates follow the templater plugin. Type configurations, please. And let's just change this so that it follows the same name as the plugin. And let's get Claude to configure templater for us. Cool. So now Claude went in there and changed up our templates so that it follows this templater syntax. And now when we create a Daily Note, it'll start to fill it in like this instead. There's a config that you still need to set. Templates won't fire without it. In settings, templater, trigger folder location. Okay, let's check the work that Claude is telling us to check here. So let's go into templater, and template folder location should be templates. Great, we can do that. And by the way, you can tell Claude to set this up for you. I just don't want to chew up context for this. Trigger templater on new file creation should be on. So trigger templater on new file creation, this should be on. Great. I love, by the way, that Claude can go and read the templater's documentation to tell us what to do accurately in here, at least so far. Folder templates, optional, but this is the payoff. Auto apply the right template per folder. Folder templates. Enable folder templates. Great. So when a note is created in Daily Notes, auto apply the template Daily Note. And we want to do this for each of the ones in here so that whenever a Daily Note is fired up, or notes or desktop or mobile, you just want to set it up accordingly based off of what you want. Okay, want me to wire these settings directly? Or rather, if you rather, I can just close Obsidian first and then Claude can do it for you. That's what Claude is recommending in here. I just want to show you how you can do it manually instead. So let's run a test really quickly. I've made these changes already. Let's go X out of here and let's create a new daily note. Lovely. Now it's got followed the same type of syntax. So I just want to show you that as an example of installing a plugin, not as intimidating, and then working together with Claude to get that going. Okay, so we've customized user.md, soul.md, learnings.md. We also went through daily notes and took a side quest into templates, used the templater Obsidian plugin, showed you how working with Claude works when working with a plugin and how Claude can help you get that plugin set up. Now let's go and make sure we wire up daily memory properly as well. So from daily note, let's go to daily memory, the template at least. Wait a second. The template is this front matter is like this. Somehow this daily memory is this red stuff. What is going on here? And is it going to break? Well, I don't know what to do. Let's ask Claude. Let's do a screenshot of this right here. Open up screenshots. And same thing, we're going to hold down Shift to drop it into the editor and go, why is the front matter in this file kind of wonky? And you can go just like plain English like that. And just to help Claude along, I'm going to copy the path of this file and paste it in here so that it knows what file I'm talking about. And I'm also going to say C screenshot. So now that you know that this is called front matter, you can actually brief Claude accordingly. And if you ever encounter a situation where you're working with some other type of software, some other type of platform, and you don't know what it's called, just describe the top section and just say the top section here looks funky compared to, and then you can give it another image of something of like how it's supposed to look. That's a really great way to get Claude to work with you too. So you can see how helpful the LLM is, even though you're a non-technical person. And in fact, for non-technical people, this thing is a godsend. All right, thanks, Claude. Good catch. That's a real YAML bug, not just cosmetic. Front matter is also called YAML. Here's what's happening, and it tells us the reason why it's happening, which is, again, great for someone who's non-technical but wants to learn about certain technical nuance. It gives us the explanation here also. Went ahead and fixed it as well. Lovely. And now it's also editing the schema.md for some reason. And here's what I did, a summary. I fixed this. This is the only file affected, and I documented the rule in schema.md. So any future front matter wiki link gets single quoted and this doesn't recur. So it's already trying to help us by self-improving in that type of a way. The template will show the literal placeholders. That's expected. Templater swaps them for the real date. Okay, lovely. So we've got daily memory now also done. Let's run a test of daily memory. We've done a lot of work so far already. Let's log it to daily memory. And this is something you can do while you're working with Claude at different junctures. You don't have to wait till the entire thing is done. Even while you're midway and you go, whoa, there's a fair bit of work that we've done already. Let's make sure we log what's been done so far. Let's see what Claude does here. So just like that, we have our first daily memory log. Vault Genesis Day designed, and it went and did a bunch of stuff. And there's open threads here also, which then means if you start a new session and said, hey, let's pick up where we left off last time, it's going to be able to read daily memory, especially after we load up the session start stuff. It's going to load up daily memory and go, hey, here are the things that are still left for us to do together. Now you don't have to store that stuff in your head anymore, or even have to go into, say, like a ClickUp or an Asana and look and read through each one. Claude is now your partner. Your small brain is now helping you move forward. Where else is this helpful? This is also helpful when your context is starting to fill up. We've gone and have filled up 28% of it already. If it starts getting here, this is exactly why we want to, while we're working together with Claude, just make sure that we every once in a while go, hey, log this to daily memory so that it keeps a log of what we're doing. If you want to get really pedantic, you can also timestamp what happened when. if you really want to take it that far. Now that I've shown you how to customize notes inside of SmallBrain, so your user.md, soul, learnings.md, as well as the different templates, let's talk about customizing the system even further. And let's talk about Claude hooks as well as Claude skills and start creating those together. And to do that, I need to first start talking about, come back to at least, the Claude.md file. Now, inside of the Claude.md, it has an instruction in here that says, at session start, please read these in order. That's an instruction that we're giving to, like a system prompt, to Claude whenever he fires up inside of SmallBrain. Let's actually look at what's under the hood by starting a new session with Claude, and let's ask Claude, what gets loaded up every time we start a new session? So here's what's going on. There are two layers that get loaded at the start of each session. The first one is automatically injected before Claude even does anything. That's the Claude.md, the project instructions, as well as the global instructions. So there's a different Claude.md that lives at the home level of folder structure. So in other words, there's a master Claude.md that encompasses all the other projects and all the other folders that live inside of the machine. There's a system prompt there. And then there's a local inside of a project, Claude.md. I know that sounds quite meta and confusing, but this is what's happening here. And then the files that I'm told to read in order as per this project's Claude.md, which is a mirror of what we see in here. So Claude.md is auto-loaded, and then the 6 brain system files are read on his own as the first action in the session, right? So now we can actually, instead of relying on Claude to listen to and comply to instructions and hope that it reads Claude.md properly, we can actually promote some of these to get read automatically for sure or deterministically, injected at the very start. And we can use a Claude hook for that. So let's talk about Claude hooks. Without getting too nerdy, what is a hook? Let's go to the Claude Code docs. Hooks fire at specific points during a Claude Code session. When an event fires and a matcher matches, Claude Code, does a bunch of stuff. So effectively, what this means is during a session start, during session end, once per turn, so during a specific type of prompt submission, Claude can fire off a set of code that has to occur during that time. It's not an instruction, it is just a set of code that has to occur. Okay. So if we go back here, we can actually build our first hook together with Claude. Instead of relying on Claude.md instructions, let's make sure that these notes get read as a hook during session start. And let's give it the files that we want. Minimally, we definitely want the user.md. We definitely want the soul.md. We definitely want the learnings.md. Do we need anything else? Do we need how the structure is laid out versus the current map of the brain? In fact, let's go find out the difference really quickly between structure and index. So let's go up into system. Let's look at index. These are the sections. These are the type hubs, everything in the brain. Okay. And this is structure. So structure is where this entire tree lives and the 2-layer contract. Okay, great. So that is helpful information for Claude to know for sure. And also the schema.md. Okay, so let's make sure that index.md is fired up, and let's make sure that structure.md is fired up, and schema.md we will leave alone and make it optional only when we are creating a note of that particular type. So this way we don't cram schema.md inside of that session start. And let's hit enter now and see what happens. Done. Session start hook is in place. So it also created a .claude settings JSON, which didn't exist before. And we can see it right up here. There's a settings.json. And if we open it, we can see that there is stuff populated in there now. Don't even have to worry our little brains about that. And on every session start, it cats these 5 into context, each under a path header. Okay. Schema is excluded. It stays read on demand. Now there are a few things. Okay, wait, one loose end. Your Claude.md still says session start. It keeps Claude honest. So wait, now that I'll be reading the files in my context, want me to trim that section? Yes, please proceed. I love that small brain is now being proactive for us and catching instances where instructions need to stay in sync with the work that we've done so far. And now it's changed the Claude.md so that it no longer just says, hey, go read these things as an instruction. It now knows that it is a session hook. So that context is in here. And while we're here, let's save the work that we've done so far to today's daily memory, please. Just good practice, you know? And this is where it kicks in, where the vault, Claude knows the vault has a daily memory convention and today's file already exists. Let me read that file as well as the template, as well as the taxonomy, so that I know what the heck is going on and I can then follow the convention that was previously laid out. And this is how Small Brain remembers and then continues to evolve and improve together with us, because we give it all these clues to be able to navigate and follow convention accordingly. And because the instructions said to append only rather than rewrite the entire thing, it added decisions in here. And as we can see under decisions, we worked on the bootstrap stuff also. So now this means that we can go in and have an audit log of what happened throughout the day and read ourselves, or get Small Brain and Claude to go read it for us and then recite it back to us or summarize it back for us. Cool. So we have this now in place. Let's start a new session and ask the same question as earlier. In fact, we can close this one because it's already done. And we finished this work. Best practice also, one piece of work, one session, please. Don't let multiple things go into one session, okay? You can leave it open if you want, just in case you forget something, and sometimes I'm forgetful that way. But for the most part, this guy is done. I'm just gonna move over to this one and go, what gets loaded up every time we start a new session? I'm gonna ask this question to verify whether there is a change. So now it's verified. Every new session, a session start hook actually fires, and it reads these notes before it even starts off and answers us. So we know that this is happening for sure. That's great. That, my friends, is what it's like creating a hook. So now let's create some skills together. What are Claude skills in the first place? Well, skills are just folders of instructions, scripts, and resources that Claude loads dynamically to improve performance on specialized tasks. Skills teach Claude how to complete specific tasks in a repeatable way, whether that's creating documents with your company's brand, guidelines, analyzing data using your organization's specific workflows, or automating personal tasks. So effectively, it's a set of instructions, or almost like you can go, well, Claude, put this hat on and operate in this way for this context. Now's a good time to open up our Claude desktop app, go into Claude Code, hit customize, and hit skills. It will show you skills that are already on your machine inside of the desktop, and you can hit the plus button in there and browse skills for some out of the box skills that Claude just ships with. You just have to hit the plus button to add it to your machine on desktop. Now, you can also, as you can see in here, hit plus, and you can create a skill either inside here in desktop, or you can do it inside of Claude Code and VS Code. Or there's another thing you can do, which is go online and search for, say, for example, Claude skills marketplace. And there are a whole bunch of skills that other people have made. You just want to make sure that you review them and get Claude to review them so there's nothing crazy malicious in there, and then customize that skill for yourself. For today, we are just going to create our own skills, and because they are going to be custom for Small Brain. So let's work on the first one. Let's create a skill that will allow us to save the chat between you and I and save it to the right place inside of Small Brain. And let's make sure this is Small Brain. And just like that, by prompting together with Claude, you have your first skill created. It's already done. It went away and created a /save chat. So there's a skill.md, there's a transcript to md .py. So that's a Python script that pulls the current session's transcript JSON-L to clean Markdown. JSON-L is just pretty much all this stuff that's in here, right? And it stripped away the noise of all the rendering background stuff that's in here. And it also created a templates. How it works, no arguments needed, lovely. And it gave us a brief of what it did. And I'm pretty sure that it also went and saved the chat. So here's the conversation. D, Claude. So the entire transcript is here, and it also points back to the session that it actually ran from. It also went away and tagged a bunch of stuff for us too. And it's unprocessed at this point because we can build a separate skill called summarize chat, and that can summarize a particular chat that we want to point it towards. This is kind of cool. So now we can actually test it for ourselves. So to activate it, first run reload skills. Okay. So /reload skills. 14 skills available, 1 added. Great. So let's test this in another session. This one we did a lot of work in a previous session. Let's go /save. Not in here. Let's go reload in this session. Reload skills. And is there a save chat skill? Interesting. So why is that not firing up? So we just ran into a bit of a funny bug. There are 14 skills available. 1 just added. I did the step that it told me to do to activate it, and somehow save chat does not show up. So let's ask, why is it not showing up? Because I can see in here that this skill exists, skills save chat, but somehow the / command isn't there. First thing I'm going to do is, in fact, command quit and then come back. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I go, all right, let's save this work to daily memory, please. And let's see whether it's because VS Code itself has not loaded that thing up or whether it is indeed a Claude thing. Every time, like I said before, we make a bit of a change and there is meaningful work that was done, let's make sure that we append it to our daily memory. All right, now that today's daily memory has been updated, I can safely quit out of this, fire it back up again, Visual Studio Code. It's going to load up the session that we had previously, thankfully. And now let's hit /save. And there we go. Save chat's right there. So it just needed a quit and then come back again, and it's right there. So let's try it for real this time, because previously Claude just kind of did it for us. If we go into this big build in here that we had earlier, we can go save chat. And let's see whether the other chat shows up. /save chat is now verified. We just ran that, and as you can see in here, it created a transcript of this entire chat around building the Small Brain vault itself and gave us a bit of a TLDR also. Now, if we go back into what Claude told us here, 2 of the daily memory open threads are now ingest items. So this one chat in here and this other chat around building the Small Brain vault. Do you want me to run that ingest pass now? Instead of waiting for Claude to detect all the ingest passes, we can build a skill and we can build, in fact, several skills, like a small brain sweep, for example. So we can go, and I won't build it out for you right now because this tutorial is already taking way too long. But here are some that you can then let me dictate to you and read out for you. So one can be small brain sweep. And what small brain sweep can do is ingest and process all outstanding and uningested daily notes, as well as chats, right? And then that way, you just run small brain sweep and it will surface anything that you want, really, that lives inside of raw. So it doesn't have to be just these three. It can be any chats that are still not processed, any captures that still are not processed. And we haven't talked about captures yet. That's a whole other different video. Any daily notes, any meeting transcripts, or any raw notes that you've had, and go, okay, this is the backlog of all the uningested ones and unprocessed. Let me run this skill and it will start to process those together with me and ask me how I want them processed. So you can go full YOLO, just go process them. I personally prefer that it runs me through an interview of what do you want me to do with these files, because not all of them are worth keeping. So that's my process in there, which I run through every morning with my small brain. Another one we can do is session wrap. So for session wrap, we can go something like, let's build a skill called, and then go session wrap. And you can even go and say, if I say any words like, let's wrap this up, or let's finish up this session, or something similar to that effect, and let's read today's daily memory and pull out genuine transferable learnings to add it to the learnings.md file, and let me accept, edit, or skip depending on the candidates that you bring up. That's one thing we can get it to do. And also tidy today's daily memory so that its sections are filled in. And then finally, you can say, show me the skill before you create it, please. So that's another one we can do. So we have an open sweep. So whenever we start anything that's an open case, we can go run a sweep and process them. We can also do a session wrap. We can also do a save chat. We can also summarize chat. But now you know how to build Claude skills and know how to customize it for yourself. Now, there's this other one that I want us to be able to build together. I'm just going to copy and paste this instruction that's inside of the guide. Again, you can find the link in the description down below. Beyond this template, there's also the guide. And this one goes, build me a vault lint. In fact, there are going to be prompts, by the way, for all this other stuff as a starter for you too. So anyway, back to the lint. There are two parts. One, a small deterministic script that scans the brain and raw and reports on any broken wiki links, any missing front matter, or any stub pages that has no body, and report it back to me. And then also a skill, a slash command that runs the script and surfaces the results. Show me both before you create them. And that's another skill that we can have to make sure that we keep our brain tidy and organized. So there you have it. That is pretty much hooks and skills. Took a little bit of explaining to get there, but now you know how to build hooks as well as how to build skills for yourself and customize small brain however you want. Now, we don't have to work exclusively inside of this VS Code Obsidian type view. We can actually do this inside of Claude desktop as well, inside of Cowork, and we can start setting other things up inside of code as well. So let's move on to this portion of the show. Let me maximize this and we can get this thing going. If you're inside of Claude Cowork, you can actually work inside of a project. So we can choose a folder, go into Documents, Obsidian, Small Brain, hit Open. Do we want to allow changes? Always allow. So now we're in here. Let's go. What do you know? What am I doing? Why am I even typing? What do you know about me? So now we can see inside of Cowork, Claude knows about me because it went and read Claude.md and also user.md. Let's also ask it another question. what gets loaded up every time we start a new session in here? And let's go verify what gets loaded up and see what Sonnet is made available for us. Okay, cool. From the Claude.md, a session start hook loads up. So it loads up here as well. The changes we made inside of VS Code with Claude Code gets loaded up in here. We're working inside while working inside of that folder. And we know what folder we're working in because we can see it in here. So what I'm trying to say is you can actually work inside of Claude Desktop, instead of Cowork in Claude Desktop. And now we can start to do things that inside of VS Code might look a little bit different, or just let me show you instead of trying to tell you. Okay. Let's do this. We're going to create a web page together with Claude Cowork. Create a web page that visualizes how this Obsidian Vault is structured and how it works. It should look like it was designed by someone at Apple. Let's see what happens here. Again, we're on Sonnet just right now. One-shot prompt, we now have an HTML file locally on our machine that visualizes for us how SmallBrain works so that it doesn't just have to be nested into a whole bunch of markdown files. We can just visualize it just from one little prompt. And it lives here locally on our machine, rendered as an HTML visualization. Pretty damn cool. Another thing we can do inside of the desktop is go into Claude Code and fire off routines. So schedule tasks that occur on a routine, on a schedule, without us having to prompt inside of Claude Code. So what are examples of this? Well, remember QMD that I showed you earlier? We can actually set it up so that QMD runs a scan of our vault and make sure that its own indexing of our nodes is up to date always. So we need to be a bit specific about this. The first thing we're going to do is understand QMD and the commands that QMD has. What are the key commands for QMD so that QMD can stay updated with my vault as it continues to grow? Because Claude is working inside of this folder, Claude is looking only inside the scope to find something called QMD. We installed QMD at the global level, so machine wide. So we need to start tweaking our prompt with Claude. I'm talking about QMD, which we installed using Node Package Manager at the system level, not just inside of this folder. Okay, Claude now found the commands that we need to be able to run. QMD update, which reindexes across all collections. QMD embed, which generates and refreshes vector embeddings. And QMD status. So let's check this thing out in terminal ourselves. Let's fire up terminal, go into our SmallBrain folder by going cd documents / Obsidian / SmallBrain D. And we pretty much from here jumped into documents, Obsidian, SmallBrain D, separated by these slashes. And let's type in QMD embed. All content hashes already have embeddings. Okay, great. Let's try QMD update. All collections updated. Great. So raw and brain, that's happened. We just did this manually. How can we do this on a schedule? So now in Claude Desktop, we can go to Claude Code, hit routines, and start a new local routine and call this routine Obsidian or SmallBrain QMD cron. And cron is pretty much just nerdy language for a scheduled task. And updates QMD for our SmallBrain. And the instructions can very simply be in terminal, run QMD update, and then QMD embed. And I'm just using this sign in here so that this little symbol in here, which is right next to the number 1 on your keyboard, to show that this is a script, this is code, and we want to make sure that this is set to auto mode. And the default, instead of leaving it the model as default, we can just choose haiku, because it just needs to do this. It doesn't really need to be extremely intelligent. We want this to be hourly, and we want to select the folder of small brain. So applied to this small brain, we want to run these pieces. Hit create, and now it's created. There are no runs yet. And we just want to hit run now and see whether it works or not. It says it's running. We can click on this to see it run for sure. And let's go always allow. And in the meantime, while this is occurring, let's go down here and make sure we go into bypass mode. Okay, both commands ran successfully. If you don't see bypass mode in here, by the way, I want to show you what you got to do, okay? Go into your settings, go into Claude Code, and make sure that you scroll down and enable allow bypass permissions mode. So once this is switched on, you can just X out of this and you're completely fine. But I just want to make sure that you've got bypass permissions set for yourself. Now you can go back to routines, have a look at this, and see a history of all the routines that you have going on and see whether they successfully passed or not. If you ever need to edit a routine, just hit edit in here and change whatever needs to get changed. So for example, I just want to make sure that this is bypass permissions and hit save. And it should reflect in here, always allowed, act without asking. So another routine that you can set also is the lint itself. So remember I showed you earlier a skill that does that linting for you. You can create that as a routine in here as well. And it could be something as simple as asking Claude, hey, this skill, I want to make it a routine inside of VS Code, right? You can go back in here and say, hey, this lint skill, I want to turn it into a routine. Tell me how to do that inside of Claude Desktop, for example, because I just personally like having all of the scheduled tasks inside of one place so I can see what's running here visually. The more you use your small brain, the more it's going to serve you. And like I showed you before, this is my small brain that I actively use every single day. And I'm in there almost my entire day because I work through it all the time. Beyond capturing just my thoughts, what you have right now is the starter package that can now capture your thoughts, get your notes, your daily tasks, etc., and then process them and make sure that it's in your brain. Where else can you go from here? What other add-ons can you start to put into your small brain that we didn't cover in this video? Well, first thing you can do is go into your Claude, whether that's desktop or whether that is through your VS Code. Desktop is a lot more visual. You can click on customize, go into connectors, hit the plus button in here, and browse connectors. And you can see there are a ton of other apps that you can connect into your Claude to then give it more information, more context, or even give it the ability to reach into some of these other platforms and do stuff for you. Like, for example, create, there you go, create calendar events for you, or write emails for you, or at least email drafts for you to approve. You can then also start to plug in meeting type platforms so that it can pull the transcript out and then store it into raw, process that into your brain, and do what I talked about earlier. You can also start to capture different pieces of content across the internet and create some type of capture system that then goes, okay, would I like to feed my raw a URL of a certain creator or a certain YouTuber or a certain podcast and get it to analyze, for example, say it's a creator, analyze the last 50 posts from that creator so that I can pull out the way that this creator talks about their content or presents their content, and then give me a playbook of ways to emulate that creator. Just one example. And in fact, we can expand out a whole bunch of other skills that we want to give small brain, such as giving small brain and Claude the ability to open up its own Chrome window where you are logged into your various different profiles. And now it can look at whatever is inside of that Chrome window without doing the web fetch, which is only for public URLs. You can now allow for Claude to have a look at those as well. And if you're part of my Expansive Manager school community, that's exactly what we'll be building next after this initial video. All those different modules and all those different modular things that you can add onto your small brain, pick and choose which one you want as meaningful for you. That's what we're going to be doing inside of our community. One example of a skill is the coach by the greats skill, where we can go out and suck in all the publicly available information from this one individual and turn that into a chattable persona that we can then ask questions and advice around because we've pulled that in. That's just one example of the stuff that we'll be building inside of my school community. In any case, if you have any trouble building up your own small brain while you went through this tutorial and this demo with me, I'll see you in the comments. I'll make sure I try to help you as best as I can. I'll see you guys in the next video.